Let's go through potting mixes. Number one, there's some very good potting mix products on the market. There's heaps of them, but please don't spend under $6 or $7 a bag. The cheap stuff is horrible. So these, beautiful, rich organic matter, really nice and light and friable, great to get early root establishment. But one of the problems with potting mixes is that they were never ever designed to grow things for more than 6 months or so. So if you're trying to grow trees for a decade, you'll find you're having to repot every year and you get slumpage and shrinkage, water repellency and all sorts of problems. So here's the trick. We're going to talk about volumes, not weight. Okay, it's important to remember this is volume, equal part volume. Get hold of some quality coarse sand, Wash River sand, quartz sand if you want to go to a sterile type medium. This is actually a lawn blend, a top dress blend from one of the large soil companies here. So what we do is we mix this equal parts, 50-50, bucket for bucket, tub for tub. And what we end up with is an absolutely superb, nice and friable, loose, full of all rich organic matter, a mix that will grow your tree for a minimum of a decade, and as I said earlier, possibly 15 or 20 years. And then usually when you see a problem with the trees not growing, it's not that it needs repotting, it's simply that that tree has choked the pot out. The pot is full of roots, there's no more room for roots, and repotting really won't make a difference. That's when you bite the bullet and either go to a larger pot, plant the tree out in the garden or the paddock, or simply, and easier and cheaper, is to buy a replacement. Heavy, a lot heavier than standard potting mix, but to get 10 or 15 years instead of 6 or 8 months really makes a difference. The other thing is you're also mimicking a good, healthy, rich soil, okay, to get all those soil organisms absolutely active, and that's the way to go. In terms of depth, we only need about 300 millimetre of growing medium. It doesn't have to be much deeper than that. So we can use all this lovely mix. So that's the basic L-cheap mix, okay, great for everything. What can we add to that to go even a step further? Now obviously as we move up the line here we're going to add more and more dollars to the cost, but the results are rewarding. The first thing is, because we're using sand, okay, it's got large particles, doesn't hold much water or nutrient, particularly water. So we need to add something to help lock onto water for longer and even help lock onto that organic matter for longer, because that eventually can leach down through the pot or just disappear. So we add a clay. What's the best way to get a clay? Well, if you don't have access to the agricultural grade clays, go to the supermarket and buy clumping kitty litter. Clumping is the key word. Clumping indicates that that kitty litter is based on one of the bentonite clays. Okay, and in this case you may see the colour of it, it's also got a bit of zeolite in it as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute. How much do we add to this? Well, an absolute minimum of 2 kilos per 100 litres of mix. Okay, so 2 kilos of that will be mixed in. So to get the 100 litres of mix in this pot, we'll need 2 25 litre bags. This is a 30 bag admittedly. Of potting mix. We'll need about 5 to 6 buckets, probably 6 buckets of your river sand and 2 kilos of clumping kitty litter, and that's where we go. And that's the basic mix. So we've got our beautiful long-term growing mix. It's about 40% organic matter, but that will break down and release into nutrients very quickly. We'll talk about mulch later on. That's how we top up the organic matter in the pots on a 6 to 12 month basis. But what extra can we add to this? There's a few things you can consider, but the one that is cheap, and relatively cheap anyway, and is really good, is a material mineral called zeolite. Now zeolite is an ancient volcanic rock. It has a honeycomb texture and it absorbs moisture and nutrients and locks onto them. But little plant feeder roots can get in there and extract that nutrient and moisture at will. So by adding zeolite, we can vastly improve the water and nutrient holding capacity of our pots, which evens out big growth surges in plants. One of the biggest problems with growing most plants in pots, and especially trees, is firstly diurnal temperature changes from hot to cold, from day to night, but also fluctuations in moisture and fluctuations in nutrients. Plants like things relatively steady. So this is zeolite, amazing stuff. How do you buy it? Well, it can be a bit hard to come by, but one of the most convenient and reliable ways of purchasing zeolite is to go to your hardware or swimming pool shop and buy filter replacement material based on zeolite. This particular product is called High Chlor or Zeo Chlor, and it is 100% zeolite. One real optional extra, and it's one I don't go for, but if you find that your pots are just way too heavy to shift around, you can buy products like perlite and vermiculite, and you can buy them in a mix from your hydroponic stores and some hardwares. These also hold on to moisture and nutrients, not as good as zeolite, but you can see they're so light you can add as much as you like really. You could probably go up to 20% by volume in your potting mix of this product to make it nice and light, and they tend to last quite a long time. We used to use beanbag refills, the little white polystyrene balls, nice and cheap, mongrel to work with though, but there are concerns about some of these polymer products as they break down. What are they releasing into soil? And we're talking about growing fruit trees, so we don't want to be concerned about any toxins being absorbed through the trees. At least you know with zeolite and also with perlite and vermiculite, they're basically sterile mediums and there are no such concerns. But it does add a considerable cost to your potting mix. So that's perlite and vermiculite. So there we have our mix. What about nutrients? What do we do about nutrients? Well, when you go to a premium potting mix, they will already have a slow release fertiliser put in it. You know, something like Osmocote or Macrocote, Nutricote, one of those slow release, only in very small amounts, but it really does help. We're mixing it with gutless sand, okay, so there's beggar all. Generally, we don't apply any fertiliser apart from that little bit of slow release into potting mix because firstly, we don't want to burn young roots while the trees are getting established, and secondly, if the trees aren't using it and you still have to water just the same, a lot of that may leach out the bottom of the pots. But for a number of years now, I've been sold on the rock dust based organic mineral fertilisers. Absolutely wrapped. So with caution, I will also mix in one of these products. This particular one is Eco Prime Natural. It is based on a crushed basalt or granite if you want to be crude about it. It's semi-granulated, it's quite easy to work with. It's got added humates and trace elements and soil activators. Only a very small amount. We're talking in a 100 litre pot, absolute maximum of 200 grams thoroughly mixed through. By the way, if you're going to do more than a couple of these pots, go and borrow or hire a cement mixer. It's the most convenient way of doing it. It's a lot easier, but more importantly it's more efficient because it will efficiently mix all the components through nice and evenly and thoroughly. So between 1 and 200 grams per 100 litres of potting mix. Slow release, it doesn't dump a lot of nutrient, so minimal root burn. The other thing is with this particular brand of rock dust based fertilisers, they have a choice. This one you'll see is called Eco Prime Natural PK. Its nitrogen content is only 0.25%, and that's important. You never mix in fertilisers high in nitrogen because they will burn roots. Nitrogen is one element that is highly soluble, highly mobile and will burn roots. You can always add, when the plants start growing in your pot, you can always add fertilisers to kick them along. You know, you can use the liquid, the organic ones, your power feeds, your Charlie Carps or whatever organic based liquid fertiliser you want. But you don't start applying them until the trees are established in the pot. So only 1 to 200 grams, and that's it. So we've got the pot already, it's got the casters, got the drain holes, we've got that beautiful long-term potting mix already, and now it's time to get to the nitty-gritty and put the plant in. The first thing is not to fill the pot from the bottom up with potting mix. You need some form of good free drainage at the bottom. I just use handyman bags of blue metal that you can get from your hardware. A 20 kilo bag is enough, and we just pour that on the bottom. Spread it out evenly, and now we have a 40mm free drain. It's up above the drain holes, so it's going to drain beautifully. But how do we stop that from clagging up? Just get some old shade cloth, 30 to 50% shade cloth. Just cut a circle and stick it in the bottom of the pot, and that will stop that from silting up. Now we can start putting potting mix in, with one little exception. I tend to go yet another stage further than that. This is expanded clay, okay, commonly used in hydroponic growing. It's clay particles that are superheated in a big industrial oven, and these particles swell up. Quite amazing, long-living, tough, but really, really light. And as you probably guessed already, because they're used in the hydroponics, they must be able to hang on to water and nutrients, and they do. So I go a little step further, and it also helps to counterbalance the excessive weight of the blue metal. But by the way, if you're using plastic pots, please use the blue metal because it gives more stability. You get a 2, even 3 metre tree growing in a plastic pot, it could easily blow over in a strong wind. Wine barrels less likely, of course, because they're heavier. So I put in a very thin layer of expanded clay, just about 1 or 2 beads deep. Flatten it out, you don't have to be too fastidious. And look, what this does is that if you tend to overwater or over fertilise, as that moves, leaks down through the potting mix, hopefully this expanded clay will trap it. But the other thing I've found by going the extra $1 or $2 with the expanded clay is that once your tree's established, and we're talking about growing in a very hot, dry climate here, once your tree is established, I'll guarantee to you that they will do well on 1 watering a week. That's the equivalent of 10 millimetres of rain or irrigation once a week. And that's because this reservoir that's supplied by the expanded clay means that obviously the potting mix is going to dry out, but your sinker roots would have, after a couple of years, your sinker roots would have got down into that expanded clay, and that makes them drought proof. However, having said that, of course it's better in our climate, hot, dry summers, so twice a week. Okay, but there's no need to water more than that except while you're establishing the plants. After 2 to 3 years, your fruit tree should have got its root system out. It should have got its root plate around the surface, okay, and it should have got a couple of sinker roots down into the bottom of the potting mix, and they will become pretty well drought tolerant after that. Now this expanded clay in small bags is not that cheap. But if you go to your local specialist hydroponics store, you can buy a 50 litre bag for a little over $40, and that is cheap as. And these smaller bags from hardwares and garden centres, you're probably talking at least double that cost, sometimes even more, unfortunately. So we've now got the base, everything's fine. Now we can start applying that lovely potting mix we've just made up.